let me share with y'all a story from the West Coast. Well, this is from the East Coast, but it's a story about the West Coast. So growing up in this neighborhood that I'm from, Riverside, that's the neighborhood that I'm from, is the Riverside neighborhood. We call it the 151. We had gangs come to our neighborhood from almost every state in the union over a period of decades. I'm talking about multiple decades. And crack cocaine was selling for a higher profit in our town than anywhere else in the United States of America. It was headline news. And because it was close to the U.S.-Canada border and it was north of Seattle. So back, man, when I was young, like 14 years old, this dude, man, who I knew through a mutual associate of ours, he was with the rival gang. He's in another gang. And, we wore rival colors and whatnot. And he and I had some friction at first. Because, he was set tripping and he was talking shit, you know what I mean? And then his homeboy, who I was in a rap group with, his homeboy was the dude that was kind of like the mediator. He's the dude that was like seeking to like squash the beef and shit between the two different camps. And the mediator dude, he was actually in the same gang set as this other dude that I'm talking about. And so he was telling my dude at the time, even though he was from a different gang, we had an alliance. We had a gang alliance, Bloods and Crips. And so the dude I was doing music with, he was connected to these cats from California who were Crips. And I was connected to these cats from California who were Bloods. But I knew Bloods and Crips. Because before I met dude who I was doing music with, before I met him, there were other Crips in our neighborhood who my crew, we knew them dudes from childhood. So I already knew some Crips. Even though my camp, my crew, my set, my gang, we're B-Dogs, we're Bloods. So the dude who I ended up doing music with, he was on a peace tip. He was like, yo, I'm trying to like squash beef between these different sets. Cause he had originally he was a popper and locker. So he would break dance. He would break dance and he would pop and lock. Popping and locking is a dance, for those who don't know, form. So he would pop and lock and he would break dance. And then later he became a Crip and officially. And when I met him, though he was Crip and Crippin', he was on some peace treaty type shit. And he got me involved in that. So one of his guys was out of pocket, fucking running around the neighborhood, man, trying to like muscle in and like take over shit. And he and his cousin, this other dude who I'm talking about, and his cousin at the time, they were going around town stirring up beef. Well, dude's cousin ended up getting shot in his fucking dome. He got shot in his head at a club in EVT. He didn't die, but he got blasted. And because they were going around town, man, stirring up beef with all kinds of different people. I mean, just man, they were running amok. They were running through the streets with baseball bats, running through the streets with straps, trying to take over, territory and turf and shit. And they were just fucking up the hood, man. They were doing fucked up shit. But they knew that where they were in my fucking neighborhood, that there was a line that they couldn't cross. They knew that shit. Because the dudes that I was associated with were Samoans, Samoan Bloods, Asian Bloods, white boy Bloods, and the Bloods network, the Bloods gang network that I was connected to had a history in that city going all the way down the coast to LA. So we're talking about Asian Bloods that were at the time at the time, the Asian gangs in the United States, they were considered the most dangerous street gang. The Asian gangs in America were considered as a whole the most by the FBI and the U.S. federal government. So them Crip dudes knew that they could only muscle their way in so far into our neighborhood. And, but they were still nonetheless, beefing, talking shit, trying to start fights, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to pull jack moves and shit. So one day after, there had been this static, we pieced it up at a party because dude I was doing music with, he's like, yo, I'm gonna talk to dude, man, and I'm gonna tell him to cool out. Him and his fucking cousin, I'm gonna tell them to cool out. This is before his cousin got shot. He was like, I'm gonna tell old boy, man, he need to cool out and shit, man, that you and I are doing music together, and he needs to fucking, you know what I'm saying? He needs to, he needs to calm the fuck down and stop, stirring up shit. And so I was like, I bet. So my crew, the dude who I was doing music, in addition to the dude who I started to do music with, who my crew and him and his crew were beginning to form an alliance, we went to this party where all sides were there, and we just pieced it up, and we just called it truce. So you had a room full of Bloods, you had a room full of Crips, and at the time, we, as the dude who I was doing music with and whatnot, we were talking about how piecing up the flags, red and blue. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? It's supposed to be purple, but, it was green for getting that money. And that particular phenomenon, it played out in different areas, up and down the coast and throughout the country over time, coming up to the year 93-ish with Rodney King and everything that was going on out west, when Bloods and Crips across the board officially called for an armistice. But before that, leading up to that armistice, we already had a peace treaty. So once I was part of that treaty, regionally and locally in the Puget Sound, we, my crew, that is my gang, we started to do business with the dude and his cousin and them who had been beefing with our crew and other crews throughout the city. Because at that point, we had a peace treaty with them dudes. So the very first plug I ever got in terms of work, you know what I'm saying? Because, man, I'm not going into particulars of details. I'm not going to say who's who and what's what. But the very first come up that I ever got was from dude, actually. The dude that was beefing and shit with our crew. Because he wanted our money in with his, and so he floated my crew work and was like, yo, what can you do with this? So that was the first time that I ever sold dope, ever. And I'm talking about powder cocaine, rock cocaine. In fact, it wasn't even powder at the time. It was rocked up. And this is at a time in American history, man, where crack cocaine was fucking huge. One stone was the size of your thumb. That's how fucking big the dope was back then. And so he probably had 3/4 of a brick at the time in his hand, rocked up, and was just like, boom, here you go. And I was like, all right, bet. So what happened, man, over fucking time was, as the gangs continue to expand outward from LA, from different parts of California, different parts of the United States, because as gangs were coming up north, they had also been going out east and southeast and southwest and all directions to the U.S. Canada, across the U.S.-Canada border, to Mexico, migrating to different countries, Germany, France. And so if you Google Bloods, Crips, countries, you can see Bloods and Crips have been soldiers in the military. They've been at the heads of companies. They've been sports stars. Now listen, I'm not glorifying gangs at all. I'm just talking about the history of it all. So anyway, man, over time, there were very large numbers of these gang sets and larger organizations. And there used to be gang summits, and there were gang meetings between the different rival gangs, and sometimes allied gangs with shifting alliances and whatnot. And I met this other dude. He was a boxer, and he had left. I won't say which gang, but he had left the Chicago gang. He left. He disavowed his affiliation to that very large Chicago gang. And he got married and had children, and he became a gang interventionist, where he would go around and try to bring peace to the different gangs. And he would have gang leaders and members sit down at a boardroom table, different times throughout the year, and have conversation about how everyone could just cool out, and how people could be more productive and people could be more, law-abiding, you know what I'm saying? So, and, ultimately to diffuse the tensions, deconflagrate those tensions and the friction, and then just ultimately, the gangs could fly colors, but and have pride in their neighborhoods, but be no longer criminally active and become upstanding members of society, law-abiding, and enfranchise, have jobs, man, become gainfully employed. So, because, a lot of times gangs, people join because they come from broken homes, but it's not everyone who comes from a broken home. People join gangs for different reasons, a variety of reasons, numerous reasons, obviously, for the money, for the street fame, for what they believe to be glory, to be part of something, sometimes just for the association. So there are myriad reasons as to why people join gangs. So as time went on, gangs became increasingly voluminous. They increased in size and scope and sophistication in organization as they continued to refine themselves and adapt to the changing environment, the political climate at the time, police and city, state, local, federal law enforcement, as crackdowns would occur, and motherfuckers would get locked up, go away for some time, and then in that vacuum, there would be third parties that would take those places, those roles in the leadership structure, hierarchy of the gangs and whatnot. And so on the West Coast, during the time that I'm referring to in the 1990s, the number of gangs was just mind-blowing. You'd walk outside and there were gang sets everywhere. Didn't matter the neighborhood that you lived in. You could live in the suburbs, and there'd be cats rolling through your streets in G-Rides, in whips, in cars, carloads sometimes, just be one or two cats rolling down the street. But a lot of times, man, gangs would just come deep, man, and be rolling through neighborhoods, going to parties, setting up shop. Didn't matter the neighborhood, didn't matter, really, honestly, if there was someone in that neighborhood that was somehow connected to the gang, whether it was from, dope deals, someone in a higher income, affluent, upscale community, looking to buy dope, from someone, man, again, it didn't matter how wealthy the community was, man, you'd see gangs here and there, regardless of the economic level of that particular community. So for those overseas who are non-native speakers of English, a trap house is a home that is basically retrofitted, that is outfitted to accommodate dope dealers and their clients. So It could be in any neighborhood, any community, and a home that just sits somewhere in that community, middle of the block, end of the block, somewhere in between. By all observation, it just looks like a family home. Might be a family home. Inside that home, you've got dope dealers that have set up shop somehow with that family or with the person who lives there, or maybe they've just altogether taken over that property and they're selling dope out the back door, on the side, somehow, some way, maybe just through the front door. Sometimes neighbors are suspicious, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they just don't have any fucking idea what's going on. So with the phenomenon of the trap house becoming a way of life in the Puget Sound, some of the different historic neighborhoods that had once been beautiful, gorgeous, aesthetically majestic, just remarkable homes, turn-of-the-century homes, homes that if you took those same homes and you brought them out here to the East Coast, they'd start at a couple $1 million, several $1 million, depending. Just nice, turn-of-the-century, gorgeous, magnificent homes, hardwood floors, vaulted ceilings, and yeah, man, and it was, in hindsight, man, it was fucking tragic, and it was sad to see that happen to the community and the surrounding environment in which I grew up, played sports, and ran track and field, played football, skateboarded, and rode bikes, and did outdoor activities as a kid, playing in those parks and the Puget Sound. And the next thing you know, it's fucking gang warfare. So, and it's never stopped. Now, it's not the same that it has been. A lot of people have retired from the gang life. A lot of people have gone on to live and lead productive lives. Some people, man, to this day, they're still gang active. They've never stopped gang activity. They've never stopped being criminally active. They've never stopped gang banging in the sense of street culture. And they're still at it. They've never skipped a fucking beat. And they have no intentions of ever doing so, which obviously is the recidivism that folks hear about when you talk about career criminals going in and out of jail and right back, and so on and so forth, ad infinitum, ongoing, perpetually, never fucking ending. So that happened where I come from. The dude who gave me my first plug, who put me on to the street level with the dope sales and shit, back before I was a U.S. government contractor some 25 plus years ago, when I was a youth, going on young adult, criminally, active and shit in the streets, just wilding out. For decades, man, we were always cool like that. And even though he was from, and is from a rival gang, we know folks, man, who it overlaps. And so we always kept it on that peace tip, on that peace treaty, forever and always, since the time of that initial friction that our different camps, clans, cliques had, our different networks, our different organizations, our different gang sets, our different associations. But man, I'm going to tell y'all, man, I'm going to share with y'all, hey man, some people are just eternally junkies, man. Yeah, they're just forever and always going to be on that pipe. They're going to be on that needle. They're going to be snorting that shit, sniffing. And they just never fucking stop, man. And man, at some point, it becomes just so grotesque, just so vile, so fucking detestable and reprehensible, man. People just punish themselves, man, their bodies. And they have no desire to ever stop because they're just so fucking gross. And they're so drug addicted. Dude I'm talking about used to be a baller. Even though he was from a rival gang set. I looked up to him in some respect. In that he had his money straight. And, you know what I'm saying? Even though he was on the other side, the other team. And we were fucking, arch enemies, rivals in the beginning. I mean, man, I had to give it to him. You know what I'm saying? Because back in the day, man, he was a true baller. He was a West Coast baller. And I know his whole squad And the dude who connected the two of us, I mean, he's a West Coast legend. I give it to him. The dude who I've done music with and shit, you know? And the other cats, you know, that I did music with from that same camp, you know? Those dudes are West Coast legendary. But this motherfucker, man, want to get up on my social media shit 25 years down the fucking road, 25 plus years, and start running his mouth, man, and making up stories and false narratives about shit that never fucking transpired. I never one time cried on the streets of the EVT back in the 1980s and 90s. Not one fucking time. It's not even in my character trait. Anyone who knows one Sir Grove of EVT and England, come on, man, shut the fuck up, man. I never one time cried on the streets of the EVT back in the 1980s, 1990s, and early fucking 2000s, man, before I came out here to the East Coast. This nigga's out of his goddamn fucking deranged, warped fucking drug-induced mind. And this dude knows that shit too. That's the other thing. It ain't even the drugs. It's the drugs, but this nigga's just legit making up bullshit. Just saying the stupidest shit to say the stupidest fucking shit he can. He's taking everything that's completely, totally polar opposite of the truth. And you know why? I'm going to tell you why. Because he saw how organized the shit was that I was doing. Because the mutual that he and I have and have had, our mutual, when I connected with the mutual, come on, man, it was all love. Our crews together, man, come on, man, we started some legendary shit. Criminal Alliance is one of the most legendary rap organizations on the West Coast, north of California. Criminal Alliance, come on, man. This dude saw how well structured the shit was, how we were doing shows, how we had a large part of the city behind us. Man, we had civic leaders. We were in the fucking newspaper for the shit we were doing. In a good, positive way. After we had been in the newspaper for the bad shit we were doing. Our criminal exploits and shit. Man, we had turned our lives around, largely doing fucking rap music and hip hop, underground, independent and shit out there on the West Coast, rocking shows, doing outdoor shit in Seattle, Bumbershoot, started to produce other artists, man, put out albums. This is back in the 90s, late 1990s, early 2000s. And guess what this motherfucker was doing? Smoking fucking stones, smoking rock, smoking bass, fucking smoking meth, fucking with that shit. And every time I saw this fool, even though I knew he was on that pipe, even though I knew that he was rocked out and smoked out, because you see, man, he couldn't control his enterprise. Yeah, that's real shit. You know, this nigga gonna try to call me out, man, so I'm gonna tell the truth about this nigga. I'm gonna put his shit right out here in the motherfucking goddamn open. Just like he tried to do, but you see, this nigga's faulty. This nigga been in violation. He knows none of the shit that he tried to say my mother was on dope. My mother was in the U.S. military for 27, actually, she'd been in the Army for 4 years and then transferred into the Navy honorably for 27 years. That's over 30 years of U.S. military service. My mother never did fucking dope in her lifetime. This nigga's out of his goddamn mind saying my mother was on the pipe and she was sucking dick and all this shit. That nigga knows he'll get knocked the fuck out talking shit about me and my family like that in real motherfucking life. If that nigga ever want to flex and push the goddamn fucking envelope, talking shit about my mother who served this country. My mother never did dope, fool. And fucking lying ass punk, you stupid goddamn fucking lame ass Jake, you dick sucking fucking pipe smoker, talking shit about my moms. Man, I had the spot. That was my house. My homeboys did not take advantage of me. I gave them access to my spot, La Familia, because in return and in exchange, I had access to all of the homie spots. You fucking piece of shit. Niggas wasn't taking advantage of me. Niggas was paying me. And I was paying them. And we ran that shit. Not only did we run that fucking block, we ran a good section of that fucking city. You fucking poser. And this nigga know that shit. So when he's out there in the little subdivision and little town to the north of the EVT, this nigga been out there, man, smoking fucking dope for decades. Just envy. You know, envious. jealous and shit. Jelly, sickle ass nigga. Cause he saw how big I was doing it on 23rd Street, Douche Tray. With La Familia, my family, our mob, and shit. And what was this nigga doing? He fell the fuck off. Hitting that fucking pipe. Used to have big dough. Yeah, he used to have big dough. Yeah, he had a lot of cars and shit. Yeah, he used to be, floating around town and shit. You know what I'm saying? High-siding, styling and shit, flossing. But that nigga fell the fuck off. Man, last time I saw a dude, he looked like a fucking Raggedy Ann doll with a few fucking teeth left in his goddamn fucking mouth, talking shit about One Sir Grove. Now, on fucking line. And you know what? When I saw him and he was in that fucking piece of shit condition he was in, I still had respect for him at the time. I never disrespected him. I never said shit about him, even though I knew he was on that fucking pipe and everyone else did. How's this nigga gonna hop up on the motherfucking, try to get up on the mic after my gang had his gang's back for as many fucking decades as we did? We let this fool come into the Riverside neighborhood 151, and now this nigga's gonna be telling fucking pipe tales and shit. Nigga, you know you're in violation. Nigga, don't you ever talk about fucking passes with me, motherfucker. Your shit's been revoked a long time ago, nigga.